This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/smallbusiness or visit an Apple store to learn more.
I'm so excited about this episode of the podcast, you guys, episode number 28, featuring an interview with Dan Reynolds of Imagine Dragons, who is such a great dude. I'm so glad we got to spend time together talking about his creative journey, childhood influences, early efforts at beatboxing, which you will hear documented in this recording, and also about his relationship with his religion. And some of that is featured in the documentary that he starred in and co-executive produced that came out last year, Believer, which finds Dan coming to reckon with Mormonism's homophobia, I guess, basically. I watched Believer the night before I met up with Dan at his place in Los Angeles, and I cried a lot of tears. Love Loud 3, the third installment of the festival Dan put together, in which you can see coming together in Believer, is happening in a couple of weeks. It'll feature sets by Dan himself, he's doing a solo set, as well as Kesha and Tegan and Sarah, and an upcoming LSQ guest, Laura Jane Grace, is playing at Love Loud 3 as well. I'm also excited in episode 28 to debut a new segment you'll be hearing occasionally on the show, where I interview someone who's known for something other than making music themselves, but who is equally obsessed with music on the side. In this case, it's my dear pal, actor, talk show host, the bold and beautiful Busy Phillips, so that's coming up after this interview with Dan. Thank you so much, Dan Reynolds, for joining me on the LSQ podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's awesome to be here with you in glamorous, glorious California.
By the chickens.
We're up on the top of a hill by the chickens. I said hi to the chickens on my way up the hill. Do you collect the eggs from the chickens?
We do, yeah.
It's a daily thing?
Yeah, every day we get.
Day?
In the winter, you get like 3 to 4 eggs. Oh. In the summer, though, it's a lot more.
My dream is to someday have livestock, but that's a topic for another time. I need to find a situation in the future where I can have some rabbits and some chickens, whatever else.
It takes a lot of, it's like you don't realize how much time it takes.
Right.
So everybody's always like, I want to have some goats and make like goat cheese and stuff. But then it just, because I always wanted to do it, but then it was like, finally we've done it. And it's like every day you have to go in, like clean out the poo.
Yeah, you're like, this is micro farming.
Yeah, and they can be birds can be a little unpredictable.
Right.
Like it feels so prehistoric and dinosaur-y. So you go in and it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but they just get excited and they'll like flap at you and it's just, I don't know.
Wow.
I've never been afraid of animals, but it took me a second with I think when I was little I got pecked by one, so I have a weird peck
fear. You got the peck
fear.
fear.
Like on my thumb or something. I remember when I was really
I have to say I watched Believer last night and cried so many tears. I was not prepared for the volume of water that would be exiting my eyeballs watching that. And I'm guessing that you weren't either prepared for when the idea arrived to make a film about this experience, that it would be as emotional as what we can see you go through in the movie.
Yeah, I think, growing up as a privileged heterosexual male, who had a couple friends that were gay and Mormon, that was my only experience with seeing how hard it was to juggle religion and your parents telling you what you should feel guilty about and then also your sexuality. The only peer into that world that I had was as a young Mormon kid who's 12 or 13 years old, don't masturbate. And it's like telling a 13-year-old boy
Yeah.
that is like, it's feeling guilty about something that's really natural and fighting against your own innate sense.
Right.
And so that was my only, understanding of guilt with something that maybe I shouldn't have felt guilty about.
Right.
In fact, I for sure shouldn't have felt guilty about.
Yeah.
So then I think, but when you really dive into going into the homes of parents who are Mormon and their child has just come out to them and they don't know how to deal with it, or they just lost a child to suicide, and what you see in the film, it's just so much heavier, and you really are faced with the reality of what these LGBTQ kids face within all Orthodox religion, not just Mormonism, even though the documentary documents Mormonism.
Right.
But you see that, that little glimpse of false guilt that I felt, they feel times 10. It's their entire life. Their sexuality is never allowed to be okay.
Yeah.
Not even within the walls of marriage, which that's when it's like with Mormonism, it's like once you're married in the temple, then it's okay.
It was an intense viewing experience, and I appreciate so much that you made that, and I'm sure it's helped a lot of people just to even have something offering that much empathy that didn't exist before. But I'm so curious, since the film got made, obviously it's sort of it takes a kind of dramatic turn at the end. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but what has happened since the film wrapped? Is the next Love Loud, are the wheels in motion for that to happen this year? Yeah. And have there been any other, I don't know, dispatches or...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the documentary shows the first Love Loud, which, as you see, almost didn't happen because there were so many forces fighting against it in Utah, which is the home of Mormondom, especially to do it in like southern Utah in Provo, which is BYU. Right. Which is a college I went to and got kicked out of, but that's another story. But we'll
get to that.
Yeah. So then last year we did Love Loud 2, which was in a stadium.
Last year was Love Loud 2, okay.
Mm-hmm. So last year was Love Loud 2, and we did it in a stadium to 35,000 people, sold out, amazing, really incredible experiences, bigger than the first year, which was 15,000. And then we're doing it again this year. Now we're finally branching it out to taking it off of the back of Imagine Dragons and kind of bringing in a lot of different acts, diversifying it, and really letting it kind of grow in its own way. And so we have speakers, we have musical acts, but it's really just, it's to give these kids who are in, southern Utah a place that feels safe, and to make it more mainstream, and for them to feel like, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not the only queer kid. There are all these people that love me and all these allies that love me, even within my faith. And I think that's really important. And the whole point of the documentary was, growing up with Mormonism, I know that when people on the outside, yell at you and are like, you're in a cult, or that's bullshit, you don't hear any of it. You just shut your door and lock it. But when someone on the inside, like a fellow Mormon, is like, hey, I don't know about blah, 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 you're like, you take it seriously and you're like, I respect this person. They understand me and they understand the path that I've been on.
And the context. Exactly.
Yeah. And so my goal was to really be on the inside and say, hey, look, I understand Mormonism. I still have ties to it in my own certain ways. Let's all sit down and talk about something that's really broken within Orthodox religion, which is that we're literally killing our kids because of guilt and spiritual guilt, and, making them feel guilty about something that they should be celebrating, which is their sexuality, which is unchangeable. And we're telling them, you can change it, or, if you don't change it, you can just be celibate. It's like, hey, you'll be able to do it, says all these old heterosexual men who are happily married with a bunch of kids. They're like, come on, you can do it. It'll be fine. Just be celibate. Like, thanks, old 60-year-old guy with bunch of kids who's heterosexual.
Well, get yourself a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. Just play that whenever you want to do it.
Or just marry, or they say, so your options are celibacy or mixed orientation marriage, which is marrying someone outside your sexual
Such a weird term.
preference. Yeah, I know, right?
I'll face north, you face east. That'll be us. We're mixed orientation.
Yep. You'll be fine. So it's really, they're just left. And then they see these high rates of depression and anxiety and suicidality, and they say, well, it's probably because the high elevation of Utah That's why they have the leading rate of suicide amongst,
God.
and it's like, no, the elevation has been the same, and yet the depression and anxiety rate has just skyrocketed. So no, that's not what it is. Nobody wants to face the fact of what it is these kids are feeling just like there's no hope for them.
Yeah, well, they've been told, they've explicitly been told that there's no hope for them.
Yeah. And honestly, it's worse to me, I think, when leaders of Orthodox religion say, there's a place for you. Hey, LGBTQ youth, there's a place for you. We need you. There's so many talks just within Mormonism, which I'm sure is all Orthodox religion, where these leaders say, they don't even say LGBTQ youth. They would never say that. They say to those who have same-sex attraction, who struggle with same-sex attraction, there's a place for you. And there's like this open door and a bright light inside. And then it's like, but come inside and there's tacks all over the ground. It's like, it's not safe.
Yeah.
I would rather they say there's no place for you.
Yeah.
Because then these kids won't have this illusion of having their faith, which is really it's really important to people who are raised.
Yeah.
Unless you really find your own way and deal with a spiritual crisis and go through maybe some therapy to deal with the spiritual abuse and all those things, you're going to maybe end up being in that religion because it's your baseline, it's your foundation. Whether it's bullshit or not, you're like, I don't really care if it's bullshit because it's my foundation. It's scary to think of life without it.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting too, because I think people, even just myself watching Believer, being reminded that, it's not just a religion, it's a culture if you're from where you're from, in the same way that any other geographically based culture is just something that's part of you. And being myself a coastal elite, as they call it, or whatever, you just think like, if you were born into or indoctrinated into a religion as a child that you, as you grow up, start to question or don't think it's right, you just leave it. You're just like, I'm a lapsed Catholic, or like, I don't go to temple anymore because it's hypocritical, or whatever you might be your thing. And that's like what I'm used to, where I'm just like, you think, watching it, I ask myself, like, why wouldn't one just leave this religion?
Totally.
And then you see these people talking about how painful it is to be excommunicated, to be made to leave, that it's not just this, that people like myself who have a blasé attitude about religion, that you could just be like, don't do that bullshit anymore.
Right.
It's like, no, it's not bullshit.
Okay.
It's not bullshit.
Yeah.
It's part of your whole world, and you want to keep the good parts. Why should you have to throw out the baby with the bathwater or something like that, which is an interesting way of looking at people who are devoted to their religion. That, to me, that was an interesting way that it spoke to me.
It's just religion is a really complex thing. When it's not blasé, when it's not, hey, we go on Christmas and Easter, when it's really your whole life growing up, you're telling when someone on the outside would say, hey, just tell the kid to leave Mormonism. Like, I've had so many people just be like, why didn't you just make a documentary and show how bad Mormonism is, and then say, hey, Mormon kids, leave.
Right.
And the answer to that is because you're going to put them in a way less safe situation, because there's a lot of complexities. One, these kids, maybe they're tied to their family is religion. And is that a right thing? No. Should your parents only love you if you're Mormon? No. But does that happen? Yeah, for sure. So then that kid is maybe kicked out of the home, which I had friends growing up who, when they questioned Mormonism, one of my good friends growing up, he's a famous singer in a band, but I'm not going to say who he is, but there's not a lot of choices. I grew up in Las Vegas. There's only so many fans there. He was Mormon. And when he questioned religion, had to move out of the house at a young age and live in an apartment by himself because of his parents didn't accept that he didn't follow the religion.
Yeah.
And that's a really scary thing. And so basically it's just, there's more complexity to it than just telling them. Even if the kid knows it's not true or doesn't even believe it, it's like, right, but maybe I could just fake that so I can get along with my mom and dad and have like Sunday night dinner with them and not have like an argument.
I want to go back though to your childhood.
Okay.
Tell me about the first kind of moments you remember feeling musical, feeling something spark within you connected to music.
So we all had to take piano lessons. So there's 8 boys, 1 girl in my family. So 9 kids, typical Mormon family. All of us, my mom read some article that said that if your kids took piano lessons starting at the age of 6 for 10 years, that they would be better in academics. And my mom was all about academia, like had grown up and was valedictorian of high school and for college, and really brilliant woman. And so academia was super important to her. So we didn't really have a choice whether or not to get into music. At the age of 6, we had intense piano lessons, recitals every year, learning all of Beethoven, Bach, and Chopin and all that. But I wouldn't say that was my first musical experience, because it wasn't by my own selection. It was kind of like, okay, this is, you go to school.
And you had heard
piano
your
lessons.
brothers playing already.
Yeah,
anyway.
so Robert, actually my oldest brother, was really into Bob Dylan, and he would go down into our basement and would just sing and play his guitar. And I would go down, and I remember being like maybe 9 or 10, and all my brothers kind of had made fun of my voice and told me I had Cookie Monster voice when I tried to sing, and even talking, because I just had like a different, very raspy, weird voice. But with Robert, I would go down and I would sing harmonies. I would just, one day I walked down, I was like, like I can't, I think, I don't even know if it was Dylan. He was like, lower the curtain down on Memphis, lower the curtain down tonight, think about this loveless. And I like was just singing harmonies from the top of the stairs, and he's like, Dan, come on, that sounds good. And I like came down and he had me sing harmonies. And I remember singing harmonies with my oldest brother Robert and feeling like, this is incredible. We're like working together and like doing this, and I felt bonded to my brother. So all my brothers started playing garage bands and little high school bands and stuff, and I desperately wanted to be with them and perform with them, but I had to find an instrument that none of them played so I could offer something to them. So then I took drum lessons, learned how to drum, because I noticed none of my brothers knew how to drum. They all could play guitar, bass, sing, and I use that word they didn't really know how.
Right.
They were just like decent at it.
But they would jam with each other in the basement.
They had like ska. It was when ska was really, it was
nice.
like, when ska had a movement, it was like the Aquabats.
Oh my God, totally.
Yeah.
Save Ferris and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and they all played, one of them played sax, one of them played like trombone or something. Right. So they had like this ska band called Super Ted in high school. And so I learned how to play the drums so that I could drum with them.
And you're like 10 or 11
or
something.
So I think I started drum lessons at 11. Yeah. Right. So then I started playing drums in their high school bands. And we would have like New Year's Eve parties, and it was like Mormon parties, so no alcohol, just a bunch. And those
just lots of skanking.
Yeah, totally.
Lots of dry skanking.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. And Mormon kids are crazy as hell because they're all like so pent up, like sexual, and like can't be sexual and not drinking. So it was just like crazy mosh pits and skanking, and like, me just playing like ska,
Totally.
So that was really my first like love for music. I was like, this is amazing. And I loved drumming. And then I took saxophone in middle school and played in jazz band with the tenor sax. And
you did have to keep the piano lessons going.
Yeah, until 16.
Time.
So 10 years of piano, and then guitar. Guitar came in high school. I could just kind of watch my brothers and picked up on it from them. And yeah. And then I started really singing in high school. Then I started my own band in high school once my brothers were off to college. And
what were you listening to? What was the stuff that what were the artists that were really leaping off the radio?
At that point, ska had gone out the window. I was never really into ska. I was into ska because my brothers were into ska. I still listen to it and I appreciate it, but it was never like, I was never putting it on. Like, I think the first record I bought when I was younger was like, I listened to a lot of 90s, like, angry women. Like, that's what I really grew up on, was like Alanis Morissette.
Right.
And like that whole 90s movement. I would sit by the radio at home. There was a station there was Mix 94.1, which back in the day was a really alternative leaning station. Now it's kind of more pop, but I mean in the 90s alternative was pop. And
right.
and I would just sit with my tape recorder and I'd record songs that I liked. So I think I bought like Jagged Little Pill. And then I remember buying what was that 90s band that had that song that was like, they made up their mind and they started walking, left before the sun came up that day. I can't remember who that was, but I bought that album. Oh, Fastball.
Yes.
And they had like, was I out of my head? I out of my mind? How could I have ever been so blind? Like, so it was just like, like good 90s, bad 90s. Like I just consumed it all and I loved it. I loved like everything from like Tupac and Biggie. I listened to a lot of hip hop, which I had to hide from my parents because it was like so explicit for a Mormon home, but I would listen to it in my car.
Right.
Like 98.5 in Las Vegas had like hip hop, and then like,
Right. And did you go to concerts at all as a kid?
I wasn't really allowed to.
Right.
I was allowed to go to one concert, and it's because my older brothers were going. So I went with them to the House of Blues when I was 16, I think, and saw G Love and Special Sauce.
Nice.
Who was touring through. Yeah. And that was awesome. I thought G Love was great. But yeah, so that was a cool experience, and I got to go with my brothers, which was nice. But no, I never went to a festival. The first festival I went to was when we performed at a festival.
Wow.
As Imagine Dragons. I had never been allowed to go to a festival, or we just didn't even have the money for it. It was like when you have 9 kids and one of your kids is like, hey, can I go to a festival? It's like, no, because then your brother's going to want to go.
They're like, Dan, you should have been born earlier in the series.
Yeah, right?
Sorry.
Seriously. The seventh son gets like
They're like, Robert gets to go to a festival.
Yeah, right?
You don't get to go to a festival.
Yep.
And at what point did you start playing around with writing songs?
When I was 13, my older brother Mac, who's now my manager, had this program on the computer called Cakewalk, and he had one microphone that he got for his birthday. And I would watch him record songs, and I thought it was amazing. And I mean, I would just watch from behind him. If I got too close, he'd be like, what the hell? Get out of here. Or, what the heck? What the heck, man? Like punch me in the arm or something. So I would have to like peek from afar. I learned how to like hit record and like make tracks. And so I didn't know how to play guitar at that point. I knew how to play piano, but that was in the whole other room, so I couldn't record piano. So then I had to teach myself to beatbox, because that was all. I had one microphone. When he was gone, I'd go get his microphone from his room, plug it in.
Right.
Well, I had this little gap of time, and then started recording songs. So I remember the first song I recorded was all beatboxing. It was called, in fact, I remember it was called All By Himself. I was in middle school, and I was like the most emo, had a big gap in my teeth and an expander with a key that you had to turn every night. It just made your gap bigger. I had the hugest ass gap. And braces and rubber bands, the worst acne ever.
Beatboxing must have hurt.
Yeah, so I was like, I had this song that was like the most emo song where the bass line was me going, I was like, and then I stacked a bunch of like vocals that were like, all by himself, no other one around. He stood all alone, when would he be found? Did he want company? You know, there's like this kind of like bunch of vocal stack. And then that night I showed it to my dad when he got off work, which I would never see him because he worked, crazy hours from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., would come home just for dinner, was an attorney. And I knew he loved me. He loved music so much. And his music taste was closer to me than my brother's. All my brothers listened to a lot of ska, like I said, but he listened to a lot of Paul Simon, Cat Stevens, Harry Nilsson. Right. Harry Nilsson was his favorite of everyone. And I loved Harry Nilsson.
Sings with strong singing, it sounds like.
Very much like singer-songwriters, distinctive voices, very versatile. Like Harry Nilsson had everything from but then he had like everybody's talking at me. He had so many incredible songs, covers, and just.
He was the Beatles' favorite songwriter.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, that's no.
Yeah, and we watched The Point, which was like the movie that he made with Ringo. And
did the Beatles factor into your? Was the Beatles around at all? Or
we listened to the Beatles a lot in my house. I preferred Harry Nilsson to the Beatles. I liked them, and I definitely like know all their main songs and stuff. Yeah. But I'm not the person who's like, I know every song off the White Album, or I don't know what that is, Lil Nat or something.
Sorry.
But yeah, I like the Beatles, but it's not like. I never got into like Sgt. Pepper. Right. I really preferred their like poppy stuff. I was really into poppy melodies, singer-songwriters that were very like, I would like cry listening to Father and Son by Cat Stevens in my bed at night. Like it was like, that spoke to me. Like Graceland by Paul Simon, I just thought was the greatest thing ever. I still do. I love that album so much.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free Second Look review. Second Look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
Don't miss out on the final football game of the season with Prize Picks. Join now because Prize Picks are giving away a free pick for the big game where 1 yard equals 1 win. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks app and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
So, I mean, it must be interesting now reflecting on like Cakewalk and One Microphone, etc. Like how inspiring limitations can be. I mean,
Right.
has that been a thing in, you know, writing albums with Imagine Dragons where you've ever kind of tried to come up with a limit to impose to help shake things up in as far as songwriting or a...
No, in fact, I would say the limitations of Imagine Dragons have been more difficult for me. I love Imagine Dragons. I love everything we've done. I enjoy the band. I enjoy writing for the band. But those limitations have made me feel like, okay, I need a little break. Because I feel like I know what Imagine Dragons needs to sound like. I know what it is. It's a pop band. And it's poppy music. And I love pop. And I love writing that. But it's also very angsty. We started it when I was in a super angsty place in my life. And I was dealing with a lot of depression and fallout from religion, going through a spiritual crisis. So I was really obsessed with the themes of guilt, feeling sorry, like kind of teenage angst. I was stuck as a 14, 15-year-old kid who was like, is Joseph Smith real? Like, what the hell? I don't know if he's real. And if he's not, then shit, maybe we die and, you know, there's nothing. And I don't know, that just really, really messed with me. So I was obsessed with that. But now that we've been a band for 10 years, I feel kind of limited by that a little bit. Like, I know we could write a record and I could do whatever I want. We could do something totally different, but we just haven't because, yeah. And I think already with Imagine Dragons from the very beginning, we kind of said, we created a large box for ourselves. For better or for worse, we said, okay, here's our first single was kind of this folky song, It's Time, and it was like stomps and claps. And then our second single was like Radioactive, which was like, you couldn't be more different. It was like this dubsteppy, urban, screamy thing. And then the third song was Demons, which was kind of like Radioactive, but nothing like It's Time. Like It's Time we recorded before we ever got signed, just as we self-produced it. And then Radioactive, I wrote with Alex the Kid, who's a hip hop producer. Right. So it was just two different worlds, which was cool and fine, and it made it so we could get away with a lot with our fan base. They weren't like, hey, you need to sound like this. Like, we could do a lot, but it still had these confines, at least for me it did as a writer, where it had to fit certain parameters. It had to, like, the songs that we just gravitated towards. I would write like 50 to 100 demos per record. And the band, we would all listen to it, and then we'd pick our favorites, and it just always ended up being kind of this certain kind of thing that was like angsty.
50 to 100, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, honest. So when I started writing when I was 13, so what I fell into this habit where whenever my brother would leave, I'd go record, and he'd go to a friend's house, you know, at least 3 to 4 times a week. So I was making 3 to 4 demos a week. So I have written from that age, like, for better or for worse. I'm not saying these are good songs, but I've written probably over 1,000 songs. Right. Are they songs? Are they ideas? I don't really know, but they're a piece of music that you can listen to that I created that, you know, is like 3 to 4 minutes or 5 minutes.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, and I mean, so, but it's, for me, it's not even like I need to write all these songs to get good ones. It really is like, it's my journal entry. I enjoy it so much. It's just what you're
doing all the time.
Yeah, it's like what I still do every day is I sit down on my computer and I write music because it's cathartic for me. It's like if I don't do it at least 3 to 4 times a week, I start to feel really angsty and weird about myself. It's like an obsessive compulsive person who writes in their journal. Like, that's how I am about music.
And is it the 3 or 4 times a week when you actually sit down, or at a minimum when you sit down and do it? Or is there music in your head at that point, or do you sit down and it's quiet and then you press a button to hear? Is that an abstract question? I know. No. I mean? That's a great question. Are you already hearing the thing when you sit down, or do you sit down and say, okay, come to me?
I sit down and say, come to me.
Okay.
That really is what I'll sit down And whatever vibe I'm in, that's what ends up coming out. So for instance, yesterday, I came in here and I sat down and I was feeling kind of like the winds of change. Like I was just like, life is going really good. Like I'm in a good place. I'm like feeling very creative and a little eccentric. And so I created this song. It was quite eccentric and a little wild. And, but last week when I sat down, I was in the really awful place. I was like sad, and I sat down and wrote like the saddest, and it was raining outside in LA nonstop. I hate the rain, and I'm like such a weather dependent person. And so I wrote a really like sad song. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't sit down and I'm like, remember that melody I wrote the other day and I recorded on a voice memo? Like, I'm not that kind of writer. I sit down, I'm very like in the moment, and I track it, and then I'm done. Like I've written with a lot of songwriters now, especially this last year. I've started to write for other just like pop artists. And to see how different I am as a songwriter has been really eye-opening to me. Like they'll like sit down and be like, let's vibe on this, and then tomorrow let's come back to it and we'll finish it this week. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't go home? Like, we need to complete this idea, guys. Like, very like impulsive, very like, for better or for worse. I'm like, that take was perfect, don't do it again. They're like, no, but I mean, like, let me sing like 5 takes of it. I'm like, no, that was like, you caught the moment. Like, I'm very impulsive in that way. I'll come in and I'm just like, this is fun, let's do this, guys. And I think I genuinely feel like most writers who co-write with me are probably like, this is a crazy person. Like, to some level. Right. Because I get pacey when I'm excited. Like, I have certain things that are I'm just very like, I've just been in my own world with it. I've never been in the co-write world where you sit in a room and write with someone else. Right. So it's very like, it's a hard process for someone else to be like, well, let's question this melody. Let's do 5 other melodies and record them all and then listen to it. And I'm like, no. Like, we have the melody. What are you talking about? Like, we did the melody. Let's move on to like the lyrics. Like, I just
right. Well, that's interesting because that's a sort of like exploring whether it's possible to be not the artist yourself, but to be the producer, and to which I'm sure potentially could be a whole zone of work going forward for you if you actually like doing it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing this year. We're going to take off some time with the band for I don't even know how long, like a hiatus of some sort. And I'm just going to start to just create. Like, it's this week you're catching me at like a really strange point, because this is the first week that I've written not for Imagine Dragons in my own time. Mm-hmm. Whereas all before this, for the last like years, every song I write, I'm like, in the back of my head is like, okay, it needs to fit these parameters for Imagine Dragons. It needs to like fit a certain form. It can't be longer than 3 to 4 minutes. It needs to be able to play on radio in case it's a great pop song that you write right now. It needs to be palatable to your fan base, which means it needs to sound like this. It needs to like I in my head, Imagine Dragons is like, I know what that world is. I know what it looks like. For better or for worse, it's like I can identify it and I can create in that boundary. But now this week I've been like creating like how I created when I was like 13, 14, which was I sat down and it was like, just create.
It must have been interesting to go, it sounds like, and I want to hear you talk a little bit about the period of time when it went from seeming like your new band that you'd started was just going to be a struggling thing that, your parents were worried that you wanted to do this, to pretty quickly, by rock band standards or whatever, becoming an actual commercial success. Yeah. Because you must have, it sounds like you went into it not think, you would have had your band even if nobody liked it at that point.
Yeah, no, I think if you're a level-headed person to any degree and you think that you're going to create a band that's going to be successful, especially now, but even 10 years ago, it was already this way. When we would tell people, hey, we're going to start a band, and even when I told my oldest brother, who was in the music industry, hey, I want to start a band and I want, to be able to do this, it's laughable. It's like, good luck. It's a great hobby. Go ahead, and maybe you'll be able to make a little bit of money, but you're not going to be able to support yourself forever.
And this
especially as a rock band.
Right, and this is, for context for listeners, that would have been what, in
2009?
Right, and Robert, your oldest brother, manages the Killers, who obviously are tremendously successful. And so even for him to even think like, in spite of what I've witnessed happen with this really good band that became this successful, it's still very unlikely that you're going to be able to make it.
He was like, it's 1 in a billion.
Yeah. Did you formulate a backup? Like, what would you have done with yourself professionally or something?
I was in a weird place because I was attending BYU. Well, first I got accepted into BYU, and right before I was supposed to go, I got kicked out because they do this ecclesiastical thing where you sit down with someone and they interview you, and I wasn't living.
It's like religion interview.
Yeah, it was like, are you doing drugs? Are you having sex? And I'm just an honest person.
You're like, all of the above.
Yeah, I was like, well, what drug do you want to talk about? But so then I got kicked out, and then I had to explain to my parents why I got kicked out, which was awful. And I was the first kid in my family. I had 7 brothers ahead of me who had all gone to BYU.
Right.
And so I was the first to break that chain. So then I stayed home, went to UNLV, and all my Mormon friends found out Dan got kicked out of BYU. So all the Mormon moms were like to their daughters, because you date within the religion. Right. They're like, you can't date Dan Reynolds. He's a bad kid. He has sex or something. You know what I mean? It was like I was labeled, and I was honestly a pretty vanilla kid. Like by all regards, I was like still living. Like I had sex with my girlfriend of 4 years.
Right.
That was it. So it was like, okay, living crazy, rock star over here. Alert. But anyway, so then I stayed home, went to UNLV. Then I went to BYU. And this is funny, but so the FBI really loves Mormons because you get off your mission. So I went on a 2-year mission to Omaha, Nebraska. You don't get to pick where you go, obviously. You become very disciplined, like how you see in the Mormon music. Like I can't help but do square hands and be like, "Hello, my name is Elder Reynolds." But you're really like, you wake up at 6 a.m., you knock on doors all day, you're clean living, you don't smoke, you don't drink, you don't have any addictions. You're perfect for the FBI. They're like, oh, they feel really guilty if they lie. They think that God's going to condemn them to hell, so they're not going to lie.
Right.
They're not going to get addicted to drugs because if they do drugs, they feel like they're going to hell. So these are the perfect people to hire. So they come to BYU routinely.
Oh,
and they
wow. Interesting.
Try to get Mormons. So they came to the college and I was like, maybe I want to be in the FBI. Because all my brothers had boring ass careers, in my opinion. They were doctors and lawyers. And I was like, boring and boring. And maybe a doctor would be cool, but way too hard and way too long of school. And so then I was like, FBI, maybe I'll be like undercover agent, like just little kid thoughts still, but I was excited by it and thought, maybe I'll be in the CIA or something. Then I sat down and my mom had this really straight talk with me and she was like, I want you to picture that someone just is doing something wrong and you have to pull out a gun and you had to shoot them. How do you feel? And I was just like, oh. I was like, well, I don't know, Mom. I never thought about that. I don't know. I feel terrible if I had to shoot someone. I don't know. And she was like, yeah. I was like, okay, I'm going to start a band. She was like, whoa, wait. Now, if the person was a bad person, it would be okay to shoot that person. She was like, let's go back to the FBI route, So then, then I was like, I'm going to defer a semester and really give this band a go. And my mom, reluctantly was like, okay, you can defer 1 semester. And then we deferred and we just started to really take off. We just started to sell out a bunch of venues across Utah. We won some Battle of the Bands and different things. So then we moved out to LA back to Vegas and started to play in LA at the Viper Room and just started to drum up some buzz. And then the band got signed. And then it was like that 1 in a billion thing happened.
Right.
And so the whole thing of strange happenings in the universe and the book The Secret and all that stuff, if you think about it every day and I prayed about it all growing up and I really believed in prayer.
Right.
Now I'm in a different place in my life, but I really was praying every day, God, I really love music, and if I could do music, let me do it. And then it all happened, and then I was like, okay, see you later, religion. God was like, what the hell? I answered your prayer, man.
That is not how it's supposed to work. I got to go on tour. Sorry.
I'm like, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Don't worry, I'll be back. I'll be back. What do you credit with? What do you credit with exciting people early on about the band? What do you think it was when you're being kind to yourself and looking at what was genuinely special about it early on? What do you think people were attracted to?
I think one, for whatever reason, whatever I listened to growing up, or I don't know if you're born with it or whatever, I think I had a good pop sensibility. So when I wrote melodies, even when I started, I felt like I wrote good melodies and I'd show it to people and they'd be like, oh, that's a really catchy melody. And I think that's something either you learn or you're born with. I don't really know. So I think pop sensibility really helped. And then I think we had a really divisive sound, which I think is really good for a band. I think that I would rather people listen to Imagine Dragons and say, I hate this, or whoa, that's super weird, I love this, rather than people listen to it and be like, I don't really care, I don't know. They can't really ignore it because it's like this guy kind of screaming at them at times, like literally. So they're like, all right, well, there it is. But so I think between the pop sensibility, I think, and then we got labeled as a rock band, which is fine. And you know, we play our instruments live and we have a guitarist who plays on songs. So, but then we got put into this category where we got an unfair advantage, I think, to everyone, because we were just writing pop music that was really catchy and earwormy. And then we were put up with a bunch of like other artists who were doing really alternative music. So then radio, we would just kill the radio charts every time we go on the alternative chart because we had really catchy music. And it's all based on feedback and research. So they're getting this research that's like, well, people like it. And they remember this Imagine Dragons song. So it just moves up and spins. And then every song we would put out would just go number one on alternative radio. And then after number one alternative radio, then we'd slowly go up the top 40 chart, and they would already see that we were at number one on alternative for this long, so they gave us the benefit of the doubt. So I think between writing really poppy music, existing in a rock sphere, which I think had its benefits and its pros and cons. The pros were we did great on radio. The cons were I think that it was really confusing for rock people, rock critics. They were like, well, this isn't rock, but why is it sitting in rock? And I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't know. I didn't put us here.
So
yeah, it's
I feel like it's
weirder.
I feel like it's weirder now than ever before, because in an age when everyone who observes music listening habits will agree that young people, especially new music fans, don't have no regard for genre, and they're not bothered about it. At that same time, we are, breaking things down into tinier categories with even more niche sentence length playlist names.
Right.
Where it's just like this is not just a rock playlist. It's a it's
right.
it's a whatever
nighttime at dinner vibe. It's
nighttime
like, okay,
dinner
what's on
rock.
that? Yeah.
Nighttime dinner rock.
Right.
Where it's just like, if you like to eat breakfast for dinner, though, this is the other playlist
Right.
that you should listen to for when you have pancakes with
Bacon
rock
and
music
eggs.
at night.
Yeah.
Or if you're looking for things that narrowly fit into these categories, then once you put them in their ghetto, you don't let them out of that zone.
Right.
It just becomes that. Okay, so if Imagine Dragons is an alt-rock band, then it's an alt-rock band,
Right.
and don't worry about it. We've got it figured out. We've got its iTunes category, its Grammy category, its whatever category it needs to be in, and then you've got to kind of stay in that category. And I guess back in the day, when you think about artists like Ray Charles or something, who made, Ray Charles goes and makes a country record, and of course it's fucking great.
Right.
Nobody thinks like, oh, not that nobody thought that was a shift, but I don't know. I imagine must be frustrating as an artist to feel like your fates are dependent on the category they put you in.
Yeah.
That you didn't ever really get to choose, and that may not even feel to you or to fans like the right way. But you lose or gain opportunities based on competing within your category.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a really strange time. I think that a lot of people who have asked me the question or said to me, are rock bands dying? You guys are existing still. How are you doing it? And what do other rock bands need to do to break at this point? When's it going to turn from like pop to this? And honestly, my answer to all of them is I have no idea. I don't know, man. I just
when?
Yeah, I'm like I don't have some secret like combination or secret like tactic that got us here. To me, the one thing I can say about our band that I'm proud of to this day is that whether we're pop act, whether we're rock, whatever alternative, whatever we are, hip hop leaning, urban white guys playing rock, whatever it is, we write everything. I write all my own lyrics. I write all my own melodies. We, the guys play their instruments. Like we play our parts. And for me, the difference between straight pop and whatever else you want to call it, alternative or whatever it is the artist writes their music. I personally don't feel like I can criticize art when it is let me actually say this differently. I can't criticize music when it's the honest output of an artist. If someone is given a song and they sing it, I understand where you can say, okay, this isn't for me or something. But I guess you can say that.
Right. When it's by committee.
Yeah. But when it's like someone who's singing about something that's important to them and that's their honest output, I mean, that to me is like, then it's just that person's reality. Or it's that song that they wrote in that moment, that day, how they were feeling. And the next day it's going to be different. And so I guess that is the only thing about music that irks me a little bit, is I'm like, well, I understand if Imagine Dragons isn't for somebody, or for the rock guy who wants their music to sound like rock. I don't know. But what Imagine Dragons is, that I'm proud of, is it is us. It's an honest output of me and my story and how I feel. And so whatever genre that is, wherever that lands, I can sleep okay at night. And it's the only reason that I have felt the weight that I'm sure a lot of other artists have felt, which is when you create something and you're so precious about it, and especially if you create something that is really vulnerable for you, when other people criticize it, it hurts a lot. When I would write a song and it's like, metaphorically speaking, about feeling spiritually abused and feeling like so depressed because I felt like God hated me because I sinned. That is what I'd write about in my own way in these Imagine Dragons songs. And then someone would be like, this is horseshit, been a produced band by blah, 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 made up shit. I'm just like, no, like that would be devastating to me. When we started the band, it was devastating to me. But where I ended up finding peace was knowing, well, it's my honest output. It's what I feel. And it's, as long as I'm writing it and I know that it's honest for me, then I'm okay. Then I can be like, all right, I understand it's not for you. That's okay. And you're doing your job and you're saying how you feel about it. But I think that I would really be debilitatingly harmed and hurt if I created a song that wasn't me or wasn't authentic to me, or somebody gave me a song and then I put it out trying to win a chart or something, and then it got criticized. Then I think it would have really hurt. Because I already have felt the hurt of, just someone, a critic, or that was hard for me. It was really hard for me in the first 5-6 years of the band.
Right.
And I guess at the end of the day, what has really helped me is, one, my wife is a real badass, and she's always stood by my side, and I respect her, and I respect her opinion, and I respect who she is as an artist and everything she's created. And she's really given me a lot of strength in my weaker moments throughout the years when I'd really be bummed on something. And I think, too, I understand the notion of being looking for something to let out your anger and try to feel better about your own things that you're bummed about. I catch myself, being like, oh, that's really shitty. When I'll see something like a show or something, I'll come and be like, man, that was a shit show. That was a terrible movie. What a terrible movie. Or this song is really bad. I do not like this song. Can you believe this is their new single? It's really not good. Or they're trying to be cool on this record. That sucks, man. I'll catch myself being that guy. Yeah. And I think the good lesson that it's taught me through this whole process is being like, right, but now you're just being that guy right now. And where is that place you're talking from? Well, it's from a place of me being bummed about that one person it started way back in elementary school. I remember the first time I was reviewed, it was this girl I had a crush on in 4th grade. Her name was Whitney Anderson. and I had this big crush on her, and so did these other 4 guys. And we all knew it, and we all knew each other, and we all knew we had a crush on this girl. It was our first big crush from 4th grade.
It's like the Grammys of 4th grade.
It was. And she took a piece of paper and she wrote all our names down. She knew we had crushes on her. And then she put personality and looks, and then gave us a 1 to 10 on both of them. And she gave 10s to everybody on everything except me. She gave me a 7 on my looks and a 10 on my personality. And it was the only thing less than a 10 on the paper. And I saw it and I was like, damn it. This whole time I thought I was a decent looking kid, but now I'm a 7. I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, damn, I'm ugly. I'm a 7, shit. And all these guys are 10s. And I remember I went up to her and I was like, She's like, did you see my note I passed around? I was like, yeah. She's like, what do you think? I was like, well, I was kind of bummed I was like a 7. She's like, right, but I gave you a 10 for your personality. Your personality's a 10. And I remember really walking away from that being like, well, I guess I have a good personality, but I'm a 7 on looks. That's a bummer.
Oh my God.
And that was my reality. So
savage.
I guess, so I had to yeah, right? So I've really had to learn throughout my years to be like, right, but when someone tells you what you are, that's what that person thinks, and that's not what you are. And you can't live by that, or else it's just going to be debilitating. Trust me, there's been times throughout the years in this band that I'm like, I just don't want to do it. Like, I want to like take some time off, not do this band anymore, go do something else, because this has hurt. Like, this has hurt me. But I guess that I have a really great therapist, and 2, I have a great wife who has just helped me to see past that and really understand the whole idea of someone being down in the Coliseum fighting this lion, and it's being up in the stands, and humanity, sometimes they want that guy to die. They just do. They're like, die, lion, kill him. This is going to be great. It's going to make me feel better about that shitty job I have to go to tomorrow. Just kill the damn guy. But that guy is the one who's down there fighting the lion. And I'm like, I am so blessed. I have these little girls that I love. I have this incredible wife. I'm in this band. It's like one of the biggest bands in the world. I get to play these awesome shows. I love it. We have so many people who listen, and it is meaningful to them. And so it sucks when I'm like listening to the one voice that's over there that's like, right, but you're shit, and it's like, oh, I am a 7, So I don't want to. I've just learned to be like, no, I am a 10, because it's my truth, and I know that to me I'm a 10, to my wife I'm a 10, to my little girls I'm a 10, to the people who come to the shows I'm a 10. And that's enough for me. And you have to let that be enough, or else, you're never going to be good enough.
Yeah. And it's also exciting to know that you're alive and you can do anything that you want as time continues. I mean, it's interesting to hear you say, earlier in the conversation, to think about music beyond the context of Imagine Dragons, and, to be at a point where it's like, it sounds like, that doesn't have to be the be all end all. Not right. All of your creative expression has to be channeled into that, because there's not the fear anymore that like, no, we've got to, it's the Imagine Dragons is the thing. It's the Imagine Dragons. Remind them it's Imagine Dragons. It's like, no, that's worked. That's working. Right. And it's safe now to do something else. To do something else.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing as an artist for me that I had to realize was, you're never defined by one piece of art that you put out. That what a limiting thing. This band that again I love and I'm proud of, and I love Imagine Dragons, but that's not all I am as an artist. There's a lot more that is inspiring to me. There's a lot of other things that I want to do before, the end of this time and I return to the Mormon God.
It's like, I knew you'd be back.
I gave you that band, damn it. Why'd you lose your faith? Well, it's funny because I had a conversation with my therapist yesterday where he was like, so, do you believe in like intention and the whole thing? And I was like, well, yeah, I definitely believe in it. And I told him the story. I was like, all growing up, I would pray, and all on my mission, it was the hardest time in my life. It was like, it's not fun when you're a 19-year-old kid for 2 years away from everybody, no phone to call home, no friends, no flirting with anyone. It's knocking doors and talking about the Bible. And people are like, well, maybe some people like the Bible, and they think, no, it wasn't interesting to me. The Bible was boring as hell, and I had to talk about it every day for 2 years. Right. But I had to, because that's what you have to do. And if you don't do it and you're Mormon, then you're seen as like a weak human being. So when I was at this point where I was 19, I was like, I don't know if this is true or not. I didn't really have a choice. I was like, all my brothers ahead of me did this. If I don't do this, then everybody's like, right, what's wrong with Dan though? He can't hack it. Yeah, are you gonna be homesick? Is that what it is? You're homesick, you can't leave for 2 years? Like, that's the culture. It's a really awful, terrible culture. And so it's like, you go out and you do that. And so I would pray every night when I was on my mission. I was like, when I get home, please let me be in a band. And I would have these dreams where I was like, I'd leave all religion and go like drink some beer and like smoke a cigarette. And I was like, this is the greatest dream on earth. And then I'd wake up and it's like, my companion would be right by my bed. It'd be like, you don't get to select who it is. Like sometimes like the most annoying guy doesn't brush his teeth. And he's like, Elder Reynolds, time for scripture study. And I'm just like, like a nightmare. Like it was super intense, but it's good because it humbles you and you learn to love people that typically you wouldn't love. And, you learn how to tell people, hey man, I really like it if you'd brush your teeth. That'd be cool. Like, saying hard things that you don't want to say. Like you grow up
taking
a lot.
the rejection too of doors closed in your face. And
it's like
being
99 doors closed in your face. And people throwing a Slurpee at you. And it's like you're already having a shitty day. A typical day for me, like I remember this one day where we knocked like 90 doors. Nobody let us in. Finally, this old woman was like, sure. And she opened her door and opened her screen door and then spit a loogie. Literally and spit a loogie that was like right on me. Landed on my like white shirt. And then she's like, ha! Mark it down in your books and get your money for this. And I'm like, we don't get paid money. And she just like slammed the door. I'm like, ah! Like so upset. You paid I had to save up $10,000 working shitty jobs growing up to go on a mission. And you're just like, no.
This is my only shirt.
Yeah. And then it's like, and then later that day was the day I got a Slurpee thrown at me. We're like walking down the street. And I'm like so upset. And some kids, like rich kids out the side of their expedition are like, piece of shit. And like throw a Slurpee. It's just like, you're just like, wow, this world really sucks. Like we're out here trying to like, whether it's bullshit and culty or not, at the end of the day, all we would do is knock doors and be like, can we like share a message with you about God? And if they say no, then you say, can we be of service to you in any way? And anything they tell you to do, you have to do. This is a secret, by the way. If a missionary knocks on your door, all these people who say no, I'm like, yo, you're missing out. You should say, I'm not interested in that, but will you paint my house and clean up all the poo in my backyard for my dog and do that and mow my lawn? And they have to say yes. They have to do all of it. It's like free. You get all this free work. So every once in a while you find a smart person who be like, they laugh and be like, oh yeah, you want to roof my house? And you're like, yes, we'll learn how to roof. Okay. And then you go up and roof a house.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like having a Slurpee thrown at you and being able to, shake it off was good preparation for having
it's true.
Metaphoric Slurpee thrown at you and having to shake it off.
It's true. It really is. To me, it was like, I am grateful for my mission. I love my mission. It was the hardest 2 years ever. I would never make my kid do it. Also, I have like my own issues with religion, period, anyway. But I'm grateful for it. It made me a better human being in a lot of ways. It messed with my mind and like this like spiritual abuse in certain ways and like guilt complexes and stuff that I'm definitely not happy for. But it was just part of my path, it led me to what. Yeah. So I wouldn't take it back.
So I know you do have some shows coming up. You mentioned that there may be a bit of a hiatus, but what are you excited about for 2019 beyond, some Imagine Dragons shows and still having a new album and stuff? Before
I ever got into music, I did drama all growing up. So I did Shakespeare plays, and then in high school I did like one acts and different things like that. And I wanted to explore that more. So I think I'm going to look into, the typical thing of every musician who wants to be an actor who wants to be a musician. But I think I do want to get into some sort of drama. Or I don't know if it's like being in a play down in New York or something, or doing some sort of film or TV. But if it was the right opportunity that felt cool, I'd be down for that. So I've been looking at a couple of things like that. I've been creating a lot of music, like maybe doing soundtracking or something like that. I don't know. It just feels really damn good to just be like, okay, I take some time off and I can just do something else that's inspiring for me. And I think all the years that I've done Imagine Dragons, it's been inspiring to me, and I'm sure it will be at some point. But for now, I'm ready to we have some more festivals and stuff, but I'm gonna take a lot of time off. I don't know how long that's gonna be, but some indefinite amount of time until it feels like I want to go back and do that.
And it must just be nice to be able to chill here at home and
it's the best.
Feed the chickens and stuff.
Yeah, take my girls to school, be a dad. Every day we wake up and I get to stick two twins in a double stroller and then walk with my little girl to school and drop her off and then, walk the kids back and change diapers and I don't know, just be a normal human. I didn't get to do that with my first girl because we were raising her on the road and it was crazy. And then this last year that we went through was just crazy. Me and my wife went through a separation, it was just really heavy, but we got through it. And so it feels like it's been a long winter but a beautiful winter with amazing moments. But now the sun's up and the flowers are out, and it just feels, I don't know, I just feel really creatively creatively rejuvenated, and just as a human, just like excited, you know?
That's awesome. I think that's a perfect place for us to end. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. During tax season, your personal info travels to a lot of places. Between payroll, your tax consultant, and the IRS. If your W-2 gets exposed, that's just the ticket for identity thieves. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome, Busy Phillips.
Hi,
friend. This is a new thing I'm doing in the pod where I want to, because the great connector is just that we love music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can sort of like vibe with someone. I'm like, you get it.
Yeah,
You've
yeah,
got that
it's
nerd
so
gene,
true.
and you're one of them.
Oh man. And it used to be like, well, we're like of similar ages. It used to be because it was so hard to find good music, and it was like a very specific thing you had to go through when you were young to find good music.
A commitment.
It was a commitment. Hours at the local record store, and or like where had the first place that had listening stations, I guess, was like Virgin.
Yeah. So what, as a little kid, what was the first music that took your breath away?
Elementary school vibes. I was very into Madonna Like a Prayer and Debbie Gibson. Always trended toward women singers. Like always had that be the thing that spoke to me. And I have the interesting thing where I am a little sister. So I had an older sibling, my sister, who a lot of times like people would develop their musical taste based on what their older sibling liked. I did like the opposite.
You dragged her into your taste?
No, neither one. Like we never the
twain
shall meet. No, my sister was very into like hair bands and like Def Leppard.
Right.
That whole thing was like her vibe. Yeah, and I was just Debbie Gibson and Madonna Like a Prayer all the way, and Paula Abdul, like all that. Well, first of all, like the Like a Prayer cassette tape, I don't know if you remember this, but it was scented like patchouli. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was scented. And so it was a whole experience. You had like a sensory overload. And still to this day, when I smell that specific patchouli, I think of Like a Prayer. But I remember listening to like Rush by Paula Abdul, the deep cuts, in 4th and 5th grade, dreaming about boys that would want to hold my hands and make out with me. And then as I got older and shit happens, the music that I gravitated toward, still a lot of women like Ani DeFranco and Liz Phair, Exile in Guyville, and Tori Amos were my big ones. And then we went into like the grunge vibes of, Courtney Love. I had a real thing for her. I cut my bangs and wore red lipstick. And
did you ever take music lessons as a kid? Was that a thing? Was there music
piano.
Was there music in the family?
Not particularly.
Yeah.
I mean, I sing. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
when did that start?
Well, because I did like musical theater stuff, but it never occurred to me to make my own music. It never occurred to me to write music or make my own music. I just was I'm like laser focused when I'm focused on something, and then the rest of it is, well, we'll see. But I was just so laser focused on being an actor.
Yeah.
That was my journey, and I was convinced of it. So I didn't waste my time doing anything else that I didn't feel would help me fulfill my ultimate goal.
Right.
Of superstardom.
But did you find that there was a feeling you got out of singing singing that was satisfying immediately?
Yeah, still.
Because you like singing, don't you?
I love singing.
Yeah.
I was actually just driving home and I was thinking, because my talk show ended last week and we have all these meetings and stuff, but I'm a little bit like floating in the next minute. And I thought, I should do a show at Largo. Like I should do a variety show at Largo.
You should.
Or the Ace while in this downtime. I was going to do it last summer, but then developing my show was just too much of an ordeal and I couldn't like take the time or space to do it. Like, have you ever seen Peter Gallagher's one-man show where he like sings and like goes through his life in song?
No. Oh my God.
It is truly.
I love him.
Jenny, I don't know when he's doing it like next or where it's going to be. It is truly one of the most stunning things you've ever seen in your life.
Wow.
Like it is bonkers. Also, that guy has crazy stories.
Really?
Yeah. So he like goes through I might have been stoned too.
Yeah.
But it was like transformative. I think Gillian Jacobs and I went to go see it probably 6 years ago.
He's
or
a
something.
good singer, I'm guessing.
Oh, he's got a beautiful voice.
Of course he does.
But anyway, Peter Gallagher's one-man show. Maybe I'll do something like that.
So where would you go? Where was the local record store for you as a kid?
Well,
and when did you start to be like discerning with yourself about what
seeking out my own music?
Yeah, or feeling like you were defining yourself by what you were listening to?
I mean, kind of go along with the pack a little bit. My dad gave me my first Tori Amos CD when I was a freshman in high school. And that was mind-blowing to me. He gave me Red House Painters and Tori, Songs for a Blue Guitar. Yeah. And
Thanks,
so that,
Dad.
yeah. So that was like wild. And then
I wonder what made him pick
he
that.
had heard them on NPR.
Right.
Yeah. He listened to NPR and he had like a long drive for his work. And he thought that I would like those albums. And he was right. Although that guy's since been canceled, right? So
yeah,
fuck him.
Still a good record though.
I don't know. I'm like, at this point, I'll cancel anyone and I never look back. I don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't need your art.
Yeah.
See ya.
There's
plenty of other art from non-complicated humans.
non-problematic individuals.
Yeah, who are good. But then also, okay, wait. So I guess around 8th grade, we started taking the bus from Scottsdale down to Tempe, where ASU was, and going to Zia Records.
Right.
Zia Records in Tempe.
Is Zia Records still there?
I think it is.
Oh, thank God.
I feel like Zia still exists.
Yeah.
And Zia was like the place where you found it all out. And plus, we were lucky because I lived very close to ASU, and that's, there was a lot of, Gin Blossoms are huge too, because I was from there.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Did they kind of do sort of a reunion recently? Did I make that up?
Yeah, no, they did actually. They just toured that album.
Right.
I should know this because one of the Sirius XM channels sponsored that tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's like 7th, 8th grade for me.
Yeah.
That and like Spin Doctors, and I would listen. I would stay up and watch 120 Minutes.
Yep.
On MTV. Before,
But you definitely, because you identify as a weirdo.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to take your self-identification out of your hands, but
it's totally fine.
When did you start to feel like I'm finding weird music? Do you like what because you have discerning taste in music as
I
an
guess
adult.
Also what shaped me, I was sort of like the run-of-the-mill 90s teen, alt-teen, sassy magazine, going to Zia Records, grunge vibes, nothing too deep or interesting. And then that kind of moved into emo late 90s. But then I went to Loyola Marymount University, which has the greatest college radio station, KXLU.
Yeah.
And even though I was a theater major, I kind of became... He's just going to stand outside with that leaf blower. Even though I was a theater major, I kind of became friends with all the KXLU kids because that's what I liked. I didn't really, in so many ways, obviously I identified as a theater kid, but really the thing that I loved the most was music.
What do you think when you're hearing a song is what hits you first, the lyrics or the melody? Or what are the things that kind of stick with you the most in your favorite songs?
It depends a little bit, but I have to have an emotional hook, which hopefully has the drive of the music, that thing carries you, but lyrically I have to be able to hook in at least a little. Although I remember when I loved Sigur Rós way back. way back. And like, that was just made up words.
Kind of, yeah. That's one of the shows I'll never forget, seeing them play at Irving Plaza in New York the first time they came through. And it was maybe spring or summer. It wasn't that hot, but like people kept passing out. I was standing near the back of the venue and they kept having to drag people who had fainted out of the front of the show.
Oh my God.
Because I just think there was something like they were hitting certain frequencies that like tripped people, that like made people faint.
It was
wild. Crazy.
That's so crazy. But then like for a period of time, you know, because I'm an actress, I was like always in weird cities. So like I missed a lot of shows in my early 20s. I was in Wilmington, North Carolina doing Dawson's Creek, but luckily there was this little record store there called CD Alley that this cool dude, Fred, ran, and he had incredible taste. And like he would sometimes get in touch with bands that were going through Chapel Hill and playing at like Cat's Cradle or whatever, and kind of ask them or convince them to just like take a 2-hour detour to Wilmington and play in his apartment, like his loft apartment. So that's how I saw Desperacidos there. Or I went to Cat's Cradle to see them. I can't remember. Because that was once I got like sort of aware that I could drive to Chapel Hill. Occasionally Michelle and I would. Because she was dating this guy who was in like a Chapel Hill band.
Right.
And so we would like go and try to see. Oh my God, what a time. Do you like the new National album?
Oh my God. How do they fucking do it?
I don't know, but it's so good.
Did you watch the short? I haven't watched yet. The short
I haven't watched
film.
it.
Yeah.
Is it starring somebody?
Alicia Vikander.
Really? That's
yeah.
so funny.
Yeah. It'll be curious to see.
Yeah, I love that new album. It's perfect for my mood right now. It's perfect for this day. Oh shit, sorry. But like, it's so funny. Mark and I were laughing in the car because we were listening to Sirius, and they were playing like the live concert thing. Well, we've seen them in concert a few times. And Mr. November. Yeah. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Every time he can't do the end of it, he's just screaming, and it is just like pure heart. Like it's not, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
He's not hitting the notes that you hear on the album.
Yeah.
It's like a wild screaming journey.
Oh my God, he's so insane live. I mean, if you've never seen them live, you would think that they're very like mature and
no,
and
it's wild,
buttoned up, and then he's just like, you're like, is he drunk? Is he just nuts? Is he the most charismatic person I've ever seen? He could be. All
of that. Is it a character? Like I often have thought, is it a character? Is he like doing a bit? Like is he playing a thing?
I don't think they know anymore.
Right.
When
Sometimes
they're the character.
That's a thing, right?
I love it. It's my favorite part.
I kind of do. Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's why I love Father John Misty.
Yeah, too. It's just like if you forget when you're in character and when you're out of character, then I truly believe in you.
I know. If
you can make a character and then forget how to leave the character.
Well, that's my whole life, Jenny. Truly, you just described the last 10 years of my life.
Well, I think that's probably an apt place for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Did we talk enough about music?
We did.